Tonight, we're heading deep into the Pine Barrens, a million acres of twisting pines, abandoned roads, and shadows that move where they shouldn't. For centuries, people have seen something out here, something winged, something fast, something that doesn't belong in this world. This is the story of the Jersey Devil, told through the encounters of the people who swear they saw it, and the history that refuses to let the legend die. Settle in, turn off the lights, and listen closely, because the Pine Barrens have a way of remembering those who wander too far. It began with silence. A Woodbury farmer stepped outside before dawn in January 1909. Fresh snow covered everything smooth, untouched, perfect. Except for one thing. A single line of hoof prints cut across his yard, not the kind left by a deer, not the kind left by a horse. These were deep, precise, and spaced far too widely for any normal animal. He followed them, boots crunching in the snow. The tracks went straight toward his fence and then over it, without breaking stride, across the roof of his shed, down the other side, through a field without a single detour. He followed them for nearly a mile, and then they stopped, in the middle of an open clearing, no turn, no return. Just an abrupt end, as if whatever made them had launched itself into the sky. He stood there, breath fogging in the cold. The wind moved through the pines. But beneath the wind something else breathed. He felt it before he heard it, a low, rhythmic exhale, like something massive was hiding just beyond the tree line, watching him. Waiting for him to take one step too far, he backed away slowly, eyes fixed on the clearing, and didn't turn his back until he reached his porch. Even then, he swore he heard something move in the snow behind him. 2 nights later, at 2 a.m., Postmaster E.W. Minster stepped outside for air. The Delaware River was still, black as ink, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like the world has stopped breathing. Then he saw it. A glowing shape, drifting across the water, not flying, not gliding, but hovering, like it was carried by something unseen. Its head was shaped like a ram, twisted and unnatural. Its wings were long and thin, beating the air with slow, deliberate strokes. He froze, unable to look away. The creature drifted closer, its body pulsing with a faint, sickly light. A police officer nearby fired at it. The bullets sparked off the creature like pebbles hitting stone. It turned its head toward them, eyes glowing like embers, and let out a scream that echoed across the river, a sound so sharp and unnatural it made Minster's knees buckle. Then it vanished into the night, leaving the river rippling in its wake. In Gloucester, Nelson Evans and his wife were woken by a sound outside, a scraping, like claws dragging across wood. At first, they thought it was a stray dog, maybe a raccoon. But the scraping didn't stop. It circled the house, slow, deliberate, like something was testing the walls. When they looked out the window, they froze. A creature stood in their yard, 3.5 feet tall, a long, thin neck, a collie-shaped head with a horse-like face, wings folded tight against its back. Its skin looked stretched, almost too thin, like it barely contained whatever was underneath. It paced in slow circles, sniffing the air, its breath steaming in the cold. For 10 minutes, they watched it move, deliberate, curious, almost intelligent. Then it stopped, turned toward their window, and stared. Evans said he felt something in that moment, like the creature wasn't just looking at him. It was recognizing him, studying him, deciding something about him. The creature tilted its head, as if listening to something only it could hear. Then it spread its wings and shot into the sky with a shriek that rattled the windows and sent the Evanses stumbling backward. In Haddon Heights, a trolley car rattled down the tracks late at night, passengers half asleep. The lamps inside flickered with every bump. The night outside was pitch black, the kind of darkness that swallows headlights whole. Then the roof buckled. something heavy landed on top. The entire trolley lurched. Wings beat against the metal, shaking the car so violently that passengers fell from their seats. Claws scraped across the roof, sparks flying from the overhead wires. The driver pushed the throttle, the trolley screaming down the tracks as the creature clung to the roof, pounding, tearing, trying to get inside. People screamed, someone prayed. Someone else fainted. The creature's weight shifted, denting the roof inward as if it were trying to crush the passengers beneath it. When it finally peeled away, the roof was caved in, metal twisted like foil. The driver didn't slow down until he reached the next station, and even then, no one wanted to step outside. A group of men sat playing cards in a Camden social club when the lights flickered. The room went dim, shadows stretching across the walls. Something scraped the windows, slowly. Deliberately, one of the men stood up, heart pounding, and approached the glass. A dark shape moved just beyond the reflection. Then came the footsteps on the roof, heavy, uneven, pacing back and forth. The men grabbed chairs, bottles, anything they could use as weapons. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a sudden, violent thud shook the ceiling. When they burst outside, they saw a dark shape leap from the roof and disappear behind a row of houses, wings snapping open with a crack like breaking bones. The men stood there, breathless, staring into the darkness where it vanished. None of them ever stayed at the club after midnight again. Years later, in the 1960s, Michael Orff was driving through the Barrens with his date, Violet. The road was empty. The woods pressed in on both sides, branches arching overhead like skeletal fingers. The radio crackled with static. Violet was mid-sentence when she froze. Her eyes widened. She pointed at the window. A clawed hand was reaching inside. Orff slammed on the brakes. The creature's arms slid further through the window, its claws inches from Violet's face. Orff rolled the window up in panic, and the creature's arm bled as the glass caught it. But instead of retreating, it climbed onto the hood, slamming its weight against the windshield until cracks spidered across the glass. Its wings beat against the car like thunder, each impact shaking the vehicle. They sped off, tires skidding on the dirt road, the creature clinging to the roof, its claws scraping against the metal. Violet screamed as the roof dented inward. Orff swerved wildly, trying to shake it off. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the creature dropped away, disappearing into the trees. Orff didn't stop driving until he hit the highway. Violet never spoke about that night again. Modern hikers still report hearing it, a scream that doesn't sound like any animal. Not a fox, not an owl. Something deeper. Something furious. Campers wake to the sound of heavy footsteps circling their tents. Drivers feel something land on their roof as they pass through the darkest stretches of road. And every year, the sightings continue. Some say the earliest sightings came from a real child, a boy with severe deformities who lived near the Barrens in the 1700s. Locals claimed he would escape at dusk, running through yards, startling anyone who saw him. But even those historians admit that doesn't explain the wings, or the screams, or the footprints on the rooftops. Something else was out there. Something that still is. And now we shift from the shadows of the encounters to the truth behind them. Because legends don't survive for centuries without roots, and the Jersey Devil's roots run deep. The Pine Barrens have always had a strange way of swallowing sound, but on certain nights, the silence feels heavier, thicker, like the forest is holding its breath. And on those nights, people swear they can feel something watching them from between the trees. One winter evening, long after the 1909 panic had faded into rumor, a pair of hunters set out before dawn. They were experienced men, familiar with the woods, the trails, the wildlife. They knew the difference between a fox cry and a bobcat scream. They knew the way the forest moved. But that morning, the forest felt wrong. The snow was fresh, untouched. The air was still. And yet, As they walked deeper into the pines, they felt a pressure in their chests, like the woods were closing in around them. One of the hunters stopped suddenly, raising a hand. He pointed to the ground. Hoofprints, but not deer. Not anything they recognized. The prints were deep, pressed into the snow with a weight that didn't match their size, and they were spaced far apart, too far for any four-legged animal. They followed the tracks, moving slowly, rifles raised. The prints led them through a narrow path, then into a clearing where the trees bent inward, their branches twisted like grasping fingers. The tracks stopped at the center of the clearing, just stopped. The hunters circled the area, searching for any sign of where the creature had gone. No broken branches. No disturbed snow. No drag marks. Nothing. One of them knelt down, touching the last print. The snow around it was warm, not melted warm. As if something alive had been standing there moments before. Then they heard it. A low, guttural exhale. Not human. Not animal. Something in between. It came from the tree line. It came from the tree line. They turned, rifles shaking. The sound came again, closer this time. A slow, deliberate breath, like something was tasting the air. The hunters backed away, step by step, never turning their backs. They didn't run until they reached the road. And even then, they swore they heard something following them in the trees, matching their pace, staying just out of sight. Another encounter came from a group of teenagers in the 1980s. They had driven into the Barrens late at night, daring each other to explore an abandoned cabin rumored to be haunted. The cabin was little more than a skeleton collapsed roof, rotting walls, windows long gone. They stepped inside, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Dust floated in the air like ash. The floorboards groaned under their weight. One of them found claw marks on the wall, deep, jagged gouges that tore straight through the wood. Another found what looked like dried blood on the floor. They laughed it off, pretending they weren't scared. But the laughter died when they heard something move outside. A heavy thud. Then another. Then a slow, dragging sound circling the cabin. They killed their flashlights, holding their breath. Something scraped against the outside wall. Something big. Something that moved with purpose. One of the boys peeked through a crack in the boards. At first he saw nothing. Just darkness. Then two glowing eyes appeared in the black, staring directly at him. He stumbled back, knocking over a broken chair. The creature outside let out a sound, a low, vibrating growl that shook dust from the rafters. The teens bolted through the back door, sprinting into the woods. Branches whipped their faces, roots caught their feet. Behind them they heard wings, massive wings beating the air. Something swooped overhead, brushing the treetops. They didn't stop running until they reached their car. When they looked back, something stood at the edge of the trees, tall, thin, wings folded tight, watching them leave. One of the most chilling encounters came from a park ranger in the early 2000s. He was patrolling a remote section of the Barrens when he found a deer carcass torn apart in a way he'd never seen before. The ribs were cracked open, the organs missing, the snow around it melted in a perfect circle. He radioed it in, but before he could finish speaking, he heard something move behind him. He turned slowly. At first, he saw nothing. Then he noticed the trees. They were shaking. Not from wind, there was no wind. They were shaking from something moving between them. Something tall enough to brush the branches. Something fast enough to blur between the trunks. The ranger backed toward his truck, hand on his holster. The movement stopped. The forest went silent. Then a scream tore through the air, a sound so loud and so unnatural that the ranger dropped to his knees, hands over his ears. It wasn't a scream of pain. It wasn't a scream of anger. It was a scream of warning. A scream that said, "Leave. Now." He scrambled into his truck, slammed the door, and floored the accelerator. As he sped away, something landed on the roof with a heavy thud. The truck swerved. Claws scraped against the metal. The roof dented inward. The ranger didn't look back. He didn't slow down. He didn't breathe until he reached the station. When he stepped out, the roof of his truck was crushed in the shape of two massive feet. And then there are the hikers, the ones who never meant to cross its path. One pair reported hearing footsteps behind them for miles. Every time they stopped, the footsteps stopped. Every time they walked, the footsteps followed. They tried to catch whatever was behind them, spinning around suddenly, shining their flashlights into the trees. But there was never anything there. Just darkness, just silence. Just the feeling of being watched. Another group found a campsite torn apart, tents shredded, coolers smashed, footprints circling the area. Hoofprints, deep ones, deep ones. The campers who had been there were never found. Their belongings were scattered, but there was no sign of a struggle. No blood, no tracks leading away. Just hoofprints that ended abruptly at the edge of the clearing. And then there are the screams. The ones people hear late at night, echoing through the trees. Screams that don't belong to any animal known to the Pine Barrens. Screams that rise and fall like something calling out to the forest. Screams that make even the bravest hikers turn back. Some say the creature is territorial. Others say it's curious. Others believe it's something older than the forest itself, something that has always been here, long before the first settlers arrived. Something that watches from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. And now, we shift from the terror of the encounters to the truth behind them. Because legends don't survive for centuries without roots, and the Jersey Devil's roots run deeper than the pines themselves. The story of the Jersey Devil doesn't begin with the sightings. It begins long before that, in a time when the Pine Barrens were more wilderness than civilization, and fear traveled faster than truth. To understand the creature people claim to see, you have to understand the world that created it. The legend traces back to 1735, to a woman known as Mother Leeds. According to the tale, she was poor, exhausted, and overwhelmed by the burden of raising 12 children. When she learned she was pregnant with her 13th, she cursed the unborn child in frustration, declaring it would be the devil. The story says that on a stormy night, the baby was born normal, but moments later, it changed. Its legs twisted into hooves. Its back sprouted wings. Its face stretched into something long and animalistic. It let out a scream, killed the midwife, and flew up the chimney into the Pine Barrens. Historians debate the truth of this story. Some believe it was a morality tale, a warning about sin and curses. Others think it was political propaganda. The Leeds family was involved in disputes with local Quakers, and demonizing them was an easy way to sway public opinion. The Leeds family crest even featured a dragon-like creature, which may have fueled the imagery. But whether the story was born from fear, hatred, or superstition, it planted a seed that would grow into something much larger. The Pine Barrens themselves played a role in shaping the legend. The region is vast, over 1 million acres of dense forest, sandy soil, and abandoned settlements known as ghost towns. Early settlers struggled to survive there. The soil was poor for farming, the winters were harsh, the isolation was suffocating. People who lived in the Barrens were often viewed as strange, untrustworthy, or dangerous. They were called Pineys, and rumors spread that they were criminals, outcasts, or inbred families hiding from society. These stereotypes were exaggerated, but they created an atmosphere where stories of monsters could thrive. And then came 1909, the week that turned a local legend into a national phenomenon. For 7 days straight, newspapers across New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware reported sightings of a winged creature terrorizing towns. People claimed it attacked trolleys, chased cars, perched on rooftops, and left hoofprints in the snow. Schools closed, factories shut down, police armed themselves. It was one of the largest mass panics in early American history. Some historians believe the newspapers exaggerated the events to sell papers. Sensationalism was common at the time, and a monster roaming the countryside made for irresistible headlines. But even if the stories were embellished, the fear was real. Thousands of people claimed to see something. Entire communities stayed indoors. And the hoofprints, the ones that crossed fences and rooftops, were documented by multiple sources. Over the years, scientists and skeptics have offered explanations. Some say the creature was a sandhill crane, a large bird with a 6-foot wingspan and a loud, piercing call. Others suggest it was an escaped exotic animal from a traveling circus. Some believe the sightings were cases of mass hysteria, where fear spreads so quickly that people begin to see what they expect to see. But none of these theories explain the consistency of the descriptions: the long neck, the wings, the hooves, the scream, the speed. The way it seems to appear and disappear without a trace. Folklorists point out that the Jersey Devil is a classic example of a regional monster, a creature that embodies the fears and identity of a specific place. The Pine Barrens are isolated, mysterious, and filled with abandoned structures. They inspire stories. They encourage imagination. They make the impossible feel possible. And the Jersey Devil has become a symbol of that mystery. But the sightings didn't stop in 1909. They continued through the 1920s, the 1950s, the 1970s, and into the modern day. Police officers have reported seeing strange creatures crossing the road at night. Hunters have found mutilated animals with no clear explanation. Hikers have heard screams that don't match any known wildlife. Drivers have felt something land on their cars. And every few years, someone captures a blurry photo or video that reignites the debate. Some researchers believe the creature could be a surviving species, something ancient, something that adapted to the dense forests and avoided human contact. Others think it could be a misidentified animal, distorted by fear, darkness, and the mind's tendency to fill in the gaps. And then there are those who believe the creature is supernatural, a curse, a demon, a manifestation of the land's history. The Pine Barrens have seen their share of tragedy. Fires, murders, disappearances. Abandoned towns swallowed by the forest. Some believe the land itself holds on to these events, absorbing them, shaping them into something that lingers, something that watches, something that waits. Modern technology hasn't solved the mystery. Trail cameras have captured strange shapes. Audio recorders have picked up screams that experts can't identify. Drone footage has shown shadows moving through the trees at impossible speeds. But nothing definitive. Nothing that proves or disproves the creature's existence. And maybe that's why the legend endures, because the unknown is more powerful than the known. Because the Pine Barrens are still vast, still dark, still filled with places where no one goes. Because people still feel watched when they walk the trails at night. Because fear doesn't need proof, it only needs possibility. So what is the Jersey Devil? A misidentified animal? A centuries-old legend? A creature born from fear and isolation? Or something real, something that has lived in the Pine Barrens long before any of us? Whatever the truth is, one thing is certain: the Pine Barrens are not empty. They are alive. They are listening, and they remember. If you ever find yourself driving through the barrens late at night, roll your windows up. Keep your eyes on the tree line. And if you hear something land on your roof, don't stop, because some legends don't fade. Some legends don't die. Some legends are waiting for you to look away.